The night in the medieval world descended not with the warm glow of street lamps or the hum of electricity, but with silence and shadows. As the sun dipped below the horizon, villages were swallowed by darkness, broken only by the dim flicker of tallow candles or oil lamps. Smoke from hearth fires lingered in the air, and families retreated to cramped wooden homes, where every creak of the timbers seemed amplified by the quiet of the night. In this dim and uncertain world, people lay upon straw-stuffed mattresses or rough wooden boards, their minds drifting toward restless sleep. But for many, the night did not bring rest, it brought pain. Headaches, those invisible tormentors, haunted medieval men and women as surely as they plague us today. Yet, while modern people reach easily for a tablet of aspirin, swallowing relief within minutes, their medieval ancestors had no such certainty. For them, pain was not merely a physical condition, it was a mystery, a riddle wrapped in divine will, humoral imbalance, or even dark sorcery. A headache could signal illness, punishment, or possession. It could be mild and nagging, or it could feel like the hammering of iron against bone, and when the throbbing came, relief was neither quick nor guaranteed. Imagine yourself there, in a thatched cottage at the edge of a small medieval village. The day has been long, filled with labor in the fields, bending under the weight of tools and toil. Your hands are raw, your back aches, and your head pounds from hours beneath the glaring sun. There is no soft bed to collapse into, no cool glass of water to ease the throbbing temples. Instead, you sit by the hearth, clutching your head, hoping the warmth of the fire or the muttered words of an elder might soothe the pain. For headaches in the medieval world were treated not with certainty, but with hope, faith, and improvisation. It is easy to underestimate the significance of a headache in a time when daily life itself was already hard. Hunger gnawed at many, cold pierced through stone walls in winter, wounds from farm tools or battle often festered untreated. But headaches held a peculiar place, because unlike broken bones or bleeding cuts, they left no visible wound. The pain was private, invisible, and mysterious. It existed in the mind and skull, intangible, untouchable, yet utterly real. Medieval people, lacking our knowledge of neurology or circulation, searched for meaning where there was only mystery. And meaning in those days was always close at hand. If your head ached, perhaps your body's humors were unbalanced. Too much heat, too much moisture, too much black bile. Perhaps you had offended God or ignored the sacraments. Perhaps a neighbor had cursed you with the evil eye. Perhaps the moon, that ever-watchful celestial body, exerted an influence over your brain. Pain was never meaningless. It was a sign, and signs demanded interpretation. The medieval world was steeped in symbolism. Every illness, every ache, every spasm of pain seemed to whisper of a deeper truth. And so, when headache struck, the response was not only to endure, but to seek remedies, both earthly and divine. Some turned to herbs, dried and steeped into bitter teas. Others offered prayers before saints' relics, pressing their foreheads to cold stone altars in hope of healing. Still others submitted themselves to the knife of the barber surgeon, believing that bloodletting would restore balance to their troubled heads. Each cure reflected not only the medical knowledge of the time, but the fears, hopes, and faiths that guided daily existence. Now close your eyes and imagine yourself walking through a medieval town at twilight. The air is thick with the smell of animals, smoke, and damp earth. Market stalls are being shuttered, their wares hidden beneath rough cloths. A woman carries a basket of herbs, her face lined with age, while a priest hurries by, clutching a rosary. In the shadows of the alleyways, whispers of superstition drift, for ailments of the body were often bound tightly with whispers of the soul. Someone complains of a headache, and nearby villagers murmur suggestions: rosemary steeped in ale, a prayer to Saint Denis, perhaps a charm hung about the neck. Each remedy reflects not only a belief in its power, but also the desperate human desire to end suffering. It is in this world, half shrouded in faith, half guided by tradition, that we find the strange and fascinating cures for headaches. To the modern listener, many of these remedies may seem bizarre, even horrifying. But for the people who lived then, they were not strange at all. They were threads of hope, woven into the fabric of everyday survival. Pain demanded response, and in the absence of certainty, imagination and tradition filled the gap. The strangeness of medieval headache cures lies not only in the ingredients or rituals themselves, but in the mindset behind them. Consider for a moment how we treat headaches today, as chemical problems solved with chemical answers. A pill dulls the pain, and we move on, often without thinking twice. But in the Middle Ages, to cure a headache was to engage in a dialogue with the world. It meant balancing humors, invoking saints, carrying amulets, or even confronting witchcraft. The cure was not only medical, it was spiritual, social, and emotional. To ease the pain was also to restore balance to the universe of the sufferer. This opening glimpse into medieval life is not meant to cast judgment, but to invite wonder. Imagine the courage it took to endure pain when certainty was absent. Imagine the faith it required to drink a potion brewed from bitter roots, or to kneel before a relic in the dim glow of candlelight, or to allow a surgeon's blade to pierce the skin in hopes that bloodletting would bring peace. Each of these acts, strange as they may seem, speaks to the timeless human desire, the longing to live without pain. As we move deeper into this journey, we will uncover the many ways medieval people sought relief from headaches. We will walk into the physician's chamber, where humors and balance ruled. We will step into the apothecary's shop, where jars of herbs and exotic powders lined wooden shelves. We will kneel in the monastery, where chants and remedies blended in the cool silence of cloisters. And we will confront the bizarre, the shocking and the dangerous, the strange cures that remind us just how far humanity has come, and how much we are still the same. But for now, hold this image: a medieval villager alone in the night, clutching their pounding head, staring into the darkness with hope and dread. Their pain is universal, timeless, shared across centuries, and though their cures may seem alien, their struggle is deeply familiar. For in the end, whether in a thatched hut or a modern apartment, whether with charms or with pills, humanity has always been united by one eternal truth: the desperate search for relief from pain. To understand the strange cures medieval people used for headaches, we must first step into their way of seeing the body, the mind, and the world around them. Pain was never a simple matter. It was never dismissed as a passing discomfort. Instead, it was a message, sometimes from the body itself, sometimes from the heavens above, and sometimes from forces more mysterious and unseen. In the medieval worldview, the body was not separated from the soul, nor was it divided into neat categories of nerves, vessels, and tissues, as modern medicine would describe. Instead, the human body was thought to be a delicate balance of forces: warmth and cold, wetness and dryness, good health and corruption. A headache, then, was not merely pressure on the temples or strain behind the eyes. It was a symptom of imbalance, a ripple in the harmony of the human form, a sign that something deep within had been disturbed. This belief was grounded in the humoral theory, inherited from the writings of ancient Greek and Roman physicians, particularly Galen. According to this framework, the body contained 4 vital fluids, or humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Each humor was linked with qualities of hot or cold, moist or dry, and with temperaments of the human spirit. To be well was to live in balance. To be ill was to tip that balance toward excess or deficiency. A headache might mean too much heat in the head, an overflow of blood, or a sluggish congestion of phlegm. But humoral theory was not the only lens through which headaches were understood. Illness was also deeply spiritual. Medieval people lived in a world where the divine and the natural were interwoven. To suffer pain was sometimes to be tested by God, sometimes to be punished for sin, and sometimes to be reminded of the frailty of human flesh. Headaches could therefore be interpreted as signs of guilt, or as warnings that the soul had strayed from the right path. The cure, then, might involve prayer, confession, or acts of penance alongside more earthly remedies. Consider the experience of a villager sitting in a small church, their head throbbing as the bells toll. To them, the sound of pain echoing inside their skull might not be understood as a neurological condition, but as a reminder of divine presence, uncomfortable but meaningful. Pain was never pointless, it always carried weight. At the same time, superstition added another layer of explanation. The unseen forces of the world, spirits, demons, witches, the phases of the moon, were believed to influence the health of the body. A headache might be caused by the evil eye, a curse from a jealous neighbor, or the ill-fortuned alignment of the stars. In this sense, headaches were not purely personal, but tied to the larger universe. To heal was not simply to take medicine, but to restore harmony between oneself and the forces beyond human control. This worldview meant that the medieval person approached headaches with a mixture of fear and reverence. Unlike a cut, which could be bound with cloth, or a fever, which could be observed and measured, a headache was an invisible torment. It could not be seen or touched, only felt. Its invisible nature gave it power, making it seem closer to mystery, closer to the realm of the soul. The very invisibility of pain often deepened its meaning. Imagine for a moment the unease this created. You could wake with a sharp pain behind your eyes and wonder, had you eaten something impure? Had your humors slipped out of balance during the night? Or was it possible that someone had whispered a curse, sending invisible arrows into your skull? In a world without modern science, every possibility seemed valid, and each demanded its own cure. Headaches also carried a social dimension. If a nobleman complained of pain, his ailment might be taken as an omen, even a matter of political importance. Was his headache a warning from heaven about his leadership? Was it a sign of weakness in a ruler who must remain strong? For peasants, however, the interpretation was often simpler, a burden from work, hunger, or the wrath of unseen forces. Still, the cure, whether noble or peasant, was always framed by the same belief: pain was not random, but purposeful. It is also worth remembering that medieval people did not separate the mental from the physical as we often do. Emotional anguish, grief or worry, could easily be described as causing headaches. If a mother mourned a lost child, or a farmer fretted over failed crops, the pain in the head was a visible manifestation of invisible sorrow. To soothe such pain was to soothe not just the body, but the spirit itself. In this way, the nature of headaches in the medieval world was layered and complex. A single pain could be explained in many ways: humoral imbalance, spiritual punishment, demonic influence, or emotional distress. To us this might seem contradictory, but to them it was a web of meanings, each strand holding truth. Pain was not to be dismissed, it was to be understood. This understanding set the stage for the wide variety of cures that would emerge. Because headaches could have so many possible causes, the range of remedies was vast. Some were grounded in plants and minerals, drawing on centuries of herbal tradition. Others were deeply spiritual, relying on prayer, relics, and blessings. Still others crossed into the realm of magic and superstition, with whispered spells or amulets worn close to the skin. Each cure reflected the belief that to treat the headache was to address not only the body, but the whole person, their soul, their fate, their place in the universe. As we leave this section, picture a medieval healer listening carefully as a patient describes their pain. There are no charts, no scans, no precise measurements. Instead, there are careful observations: the color of the patient's skin, the rhythm of their pulse, the sound of their voice, the sorrow in their eyes. A diagnosis was less about isolating a single cause and more about interpreting the person's entire condition, their place in a world filled with divine will and natural forces. The headache, then, was not just an ailment, it was a symbol. It was a signpost pointing toward imbalance, punishment, or mystery. And because of this, its cures were equally symbolic, equally rich with meaning. To treat a headache was to restore order where chaos had intruded. And so, as we journey forward, we will see how this layered understanding of pain gave rise to remedies, both gentle and brutal, both wise and strange, remedies that today may seem bewildering, even shocking. But in their time, each was logical, each was meaningful, each was a response to the complex and symbolic nature of pain. If you were a sufferer of headaches in the medieval world, and if you were fortunate enough to have the means, you might find yourself in the presence of a physician. Unlike the humble village herbalist or the local midwife, a physician represented the learned elite of medicine, trained often at great expense in the universities of Europe. Their appearance alone conveyed authority: flowing robes, pointed caps, and the air of scholarly wisdom. But what truly defined them was their lens upon the human body, a worldview inherited from antiquity, polished by centuries of commentary, and rooted firmly in the balance of humors. To a physician, your headache was not an isolated affliction. It was the echo of imbalance, a warning sign that one of the four humors had overstepped its bounds. These four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, were not merely fluids within the body, but the very essence of human health and temperament. Each person was thought to carry a unique humoral makeup, influencing not only their physical well-being, but also their character, their emotions, and even their destiny. Blood was warm and moist, tied to vigor and a cheerful disposition. Phlegm was cold and wet, linked to sluggishness and calm. Yellow bile, hot and dry, brought fierceness and irritability. Black bile, cold and dry, was connected with melancholy and brooding thought. In health, these humors coexisted in harmony, like the strings of a lute tuned to perfect resonance. But when one humor grew excessive or deficient, the music of the body turned discordant. Pain was the sound of that discord, and a headache was often its clearest note. So when you described your pain to a physician, whether sharp and stabbing, dull and lingering, or throbbing like the pounding of a drum, they did not simply listen to the symptoms. They observed your skin, your eyes, your posture, even your dreams. They might ask, was the pain worse in the morning or the night? Did it grow sharper after certain foods? Did you often feel heat rising in your cheeks, or did you shiver despite warmth? Every detail was a clue, a sign pointing to which humor had gained the upper hand. For example, if your headache came with redness of the face and a hot, throbbing sensation, the physician might declare that your blood was in excess. The cure would be to release that excess, often through bloodletting or leeches. If the pain was heavy and dull, accompanied by sluggishness, perhaps phlegm was the culprit. Remedies would then aim to warm and dry the body: spiced wine, pungent herbs, or heated compresses. A sharp, burning headache could be blamed on yellow bile, calling for cooling diets and purges. And if the pain was lingering, dragging the spirit into sadness, black bile might be at fault, treated with soothing tonics and gentle correction of the melancholic soul. But the physician's art extended beyond observation. It was deeply bound to philosophy, to the idea that the microcosm of the human body reflected the macrocosm of the universe. Just as the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, moved in balance, so too must the humors within the body. A headache was not a small ailment, but a disruption in the harmony between man and cosmos. To heal was not simply to ease the pain, but to restore the rightful balance of nature itself. Picture the scene. You sit in a dim chamber lined with books and scrolls, the smell of ink and parchment thick in the air. Candles flicker against stone walls, casting long shadows. The physician, with a grave expression, dips his quill to record your symptoms in Latin, a language far from your own tongue. He speaks of Galen, of Aristotle, of Avicenna, weaving your pain into the tapestry of ancient wisdom. You are not merely a sufferer, you are a case, an instance of imbalance, a reflection of the eternal struggle between order and disorder. The remedies prescribed could be varied. Diet was often the first recourse. If blood was in excess, you might be told to avoid rich meats and wines, turning instead to light broths or cooling vegetables. If phlegm weighed you down, pungent spices like pepper and ginger might be recommended to stir your sluggish system. Exercise, baths, and even controlled exposure to certain smells could be ordered to redirect the humors toward balance. When diet proved insufficient, stronger interventions followed. Bloodletting was among the most common, a ritual as much as a treatment. A vein might be opened at the temple, the arm, or behind the ear, depending on where the physician believed the humor was trapped. The slow trickle of blood into a bowl was thought to release the pressure within, to draw out the excess, and restore calm to the aching head. To the modern ear, this may sound brutal, but to the medieval patient, it was a trusted act, sanctified by centuries of medical tradition. Other purges were less bloody, but no less unpleasant. Strong laxatives or emetics might be prescribed to cleanse the body of corrupted humors. The patient, weakened but hopeful, endured these ordeals in the belief that the violent expulsion of fluids would bring peace to the mind. At times, scarification or the application of heated cups to the skin was used to draw humors away from the head. Every method had the same goal: to restore balance, to quiet the discordant music of the body. Yet not all was harsh. Physicians also prescribed gentle tonics infused with herbs like lavender, rosemary, or chamomile. These were believed to soothe the spirit as much as the body, calming not only the pain, but the restlessness that often accompanied it. For headaches tied to melancholy, music, fresh air and companionship were sometimes suggested, for the balance of humors was also the balance of life itself. It is important to remember that these physicians were respected not merely as healers, but as scholars. Their knowledge placed them within the learned culture of their age, connected to universities, cathedrals, and courts. To seek their help was to seek wisdom that stretched back to the ancients, filtered through the pens of countless commentators. Even when their cures failed, as they often did, the authority of their words carried weight. To us their methods may seem misguided, even dangerous, but within their worldview, they were profoundly logical. The body was a balance of forces, and pain was imbalance. To cure was to restore harmony, and in this way the physician's lens reveals something deeply human, the need to make sense of suffering, to place pain within a system that gives it meaning, and offers a path toward relief. As we close this section, imagine again the patient rising from the physician's chamber. Perhaps blood has been drawn, or a bitter potion prescribed. Perhaps the advice was to walk in gardens, to eat lightly, to pray. The headache may linger, or it may fade, but regardless of outcome, the sufferer leaves with a sense that their pain has been heard, interpreted, and woven into the greater order of the world. This was the gift of the physician's lens, not always relief, but always meaning, and meaning, in a world filled with mystery, was itself a kind of cure. When we imagine the Viking world, we often see warriors at sea, farmers in the fields, or skalds reciting sagas by firelight. Yet, one of the most fascinating aspects of their lives remains hidden in the shadows, the way they slept. Just as they had unique approaches to water, food, and travel, the Vikings also lived by rhythms of sleep that seem foreign to us today, rhythms that reveal much about human nature itself. In the modern age, we assume that a single stretch of uninterrupted sleep is normal. 8 hours from night to morning is considered the standard. But in the Viking Age, and indeed in much of the medieval world, the night was often divided into two separate sleeps, sometimes called first sleep and second sleep. Between them lay a period of quiet wakefulness, a liminal time when the household stirred softly in the dark. Imagine a Viking longhouse on a winter's night. The fire has burned low, leaving a faint glow among the embers. Men, women, and children lie beneath furs, huddled for warmth. Outside, the world is silent, snow blanketing the earth. They drift into their first sleep, soon after dusk, the long northern nights offering hours of rest. Yet several hours later, before dawn has come, eyes begin to open. People rise not with alarm, but with calm acceptance, for this waking is expected. During this interval, the household might tend the fire, step outside to relieve themselves, or murmur prayers to the gods. Some might share whispered conversations, exchange tenderness with their partners, or quietly reflect on dreams. In many cultures, such midnight hours were considered a time of special clarity, a space for thought, divination, and intimacy. Then gradually, they would settle again into their second sleep, continuing until the first light of morning. The Vikings, like many of their contemporaries, did not consider this broken sleep to be a problem. It was a natural part of the cycle of night and day, shaped by the length of darkness in northern lands. Their lives were governed not by clocks, but by the turning of seasons, the rising of the sun, and the settling of dusk. In such a world, waking in the middle of the night was not an intrusion, but a rhythm of life itself. Modern science has, in fact, confirmed this. Studies show that humans left without artificial light or schedules often revert to segmented sleep, two periods divided by an hour or two of wakefulness. Our bodies may be wired for this older rhythm, only pushed aside by the demands of modern industry and electric lighting. The Viking experience of sleep, then, is not alien, but deeply human. It suggests that our own struggles with insomnia or midnight waking may not be disorders at all, but echoes of an ancient pattern. Beyond their daily sleep, the Vikings also connected dreams with meaning. In the sagas, Dreams are not dismissed as random. They are messages, warnings or glimpses of fate. A warrior might dream of ravens circling overhead, a sign of Odin's presence. A farmer might dream of fields heavy with grain, a promise of good harvest. Dreams born in the hours between first and second sleep carried weight and mystery. To awaken in the night and speak of a dream by the hearth was to brush against the realm of the unseen. This intertwining of sleep, dreams and destiny reveals another lesson from Viking life. Rest was not merely physical, it was also spiritual. The stillness of the night was an opening to the world beyond sight, a threshold where the gods might whisper or fate might stir. In a society where survival depended on weather, war, and the whims of fortune, such messages were taken seriously. We might also reflect on the communal nature of Viking sleep. In longhouses, many shared the same space, lying close together. Privacy was rare, and sleep was a collective act. Children nestled beside parents, travelers alongside hosts, servants near masters. This closeness created warmth, but also intimacy, a sense of shared vulnerability. The night was not something to endure alone, but something to face together. In our modern age, where solitude is common and loneliness widespread, there is something poignant in this vision of sleep as a communal bond. Finally, the Viking rhythms of sleep teach us about balance. Their nights were long, their days shaped by the seasons, and their bodies moved in harmony with these natural cycles. They accepted waking in darkness without anxiety, drifting between sleep, wakefulness, and dreams as naturally as the tide rises and falls. For us today, who often battle against sleeplessness with frustration, their approach offers comfort. To wake at night is not a failure, it is part of our heritage, a reminder that rest is larger than a rigid schedule. So as we reflect on the forgotten rhythms of Viking sleep, we discover not just a curiosity of history, but a mirror of ourselves. Their two-part nights, their reverence for dreams, their communal warmth, and their calm acceptance of nature's cycles, speak across the centuries. They remind us that sleep is not simply about hours counted, but about harmony with the world around us. Perhaps this is the final lesson, that in sleep as in life, the Vikings trusted in rhythm, in flow, in the balance between darkness and light. And in remembering their ways, we may rediscover peace in our own restless nights. Step out of the apothecary's fragrant, shadowed shop and into a very different place, the chamber of the barber surgeon. The smell here is not of herbs and spices, but of iron, blood, and the sharp tang of heated metal. The hum of whispered prayers mixes with the crackle of the fire, where blades are warmed and cups are prepared. Here headaches were not treated with gentle teas or fragrant oils, but with steel, leeches, and blood. In the medieval world, the line between barber and surgeon was a blurred one. Barbers trimmed beards and cut hair, but they also drew blood, set bones, and performed minor surgeries. Their symbol, the barber's pole, still seen today, once represented this dual role: the red stripe for blood, the white for bandages. The pole itself echoing the wooden staff that patients gripped as their veins were opened. These barber surgeons, though less learned than university physicians, were far more accessible to ordinary people. For the suffering villager, unable to pay for the physician's counsel, it was often the barber surgeon who provided the cure. And for headaches, their methods were direct, physical, and often brutal. One of the most common treatments was bloodletting. Rooted in humoral theory, it was believed that an excess of blood in the body could rise to the head, causing pain and pressure. The solution, therefore, was simple in principle: release the excess. The barber surgeon would select a vein, perhaps in the arm, sometimes even near the temples or behind the ears, and open it with a sharp blade. The patient sat, gripping a staff, teeth clenched, as blood trickled into a bowl. The amount drawn was carefully judged, for too little was thought ineffective, but too much could leave the patient weak or even dead. To the modern listener, this may sound horrific, but to the medieval sufferer, it was a trusted ritual, sanctioned by centuries of practice. When blades were not used, leeches often were, kept in jars of water. These small wriggling creatures were applied to the skin, where they attached themselves and drew blood slowly, almost discreetly. For headaches, leeches might be placed near the temples, behind the ears, or along the neck, their tiny mouths fastening to the flesh. The patient endured the odd, unsettling sensation as the leeches swelled with blood. When they fell away, it was believed that the excess humor had been drained, the pain eased by the natural work of these living instruments. Another method employed by barber surgeons was scarification. Here, instead of a single incision, a series of shallow cuts was made across the skin of the scalp or neck. Heated cups were then placed over the cuts, creating suction as the air cooled and contracted inside the vessels. The suction drew blood into the cups, pulling the excess humor away from the aching head. The marks left behind were painful and unsightly, but to those desperate for relief, such wounds were worth the chance of easing the relentless pounding. It was not uncommon for the barber surgeon to combine these methods with other practices. Hot irons might be applied briefly to the skin to cauterize or to redirect the humors. Herbal poultices could be laid across the brow after bloodletting, the cooling plants meant to calm the rawness left behind. Sometimes even trepanation, the drilling of small holes into the skull, was attempted in cases of unbearable persistent headaches, believed to release trapped vapors or bad spirits. Though far rarer than bleeding or leeches, this practice lingered as a desperate measure, echoing back to ancient times. Yet despite the harshness of these treatments, they carried with them a strange sense of comfort. Pain was met with action. Where the physician's advice might seem distant or abstract, avoid certain foods, pray, or rest, the barber surgeon offered something immediate. Blood was drawn, cups were filled, leeches swelled and dropped away. The patient could see and feel the cure in motion. The logic was visible. Pain in the head, blood removed from the body, balance restored. And so, barber surgeons became trusted figures in towns and villages. They worked not in lofty halls, but in busy marketplaces and humble shops, their tools simple but effective in their own age. For the common person, these men were healers of the body in the most tangible way. Still, their work carried risks. Infection was common, though not understood in modern terms. Excessive bleeding could weaken or kill, and often the headache returned, its underlying cause untouched by blades or leeches. But in a time when medical knowledge was limited, when suffering demanded action, the barber surgeon's blade was better than silence. To do something, anything, was often preferable to doing nothing at all. Imagine for a moment the scene of a patient enduring bloodletting for a pounding headache. The room is dim, the air heavy with smoke from the fire. The barber surgeon steadies the patient's arm, makes a swift cut, and crimson flows into the waiting bowl. The patient winces, yet hopes. Each drop is imagined as relief, each trickle as balance restored. Outside, the marketplace hums, but inside, time slows to the rhythm of the flowing blood. When the bowl is removed, and the cut bound, the patient rises, lighter, weaker, yet convinced that healing has begun. This practice endured not for years, but for centuries, shaping the very rhythm of medicine in the medieval world. And it speaks to something timeless in the human spirit, the belief that pain, however invisible, can be mastered through ritual and response. The barber surgeon's blade, then, was more than a tool. It was a symbol of action, of intervention, of the determination to fight pain with steel and faith. And while we may recoil at the thought of blood trickling into bowls, or leeches clinging to temples, we must also recognize the hope that guided these acts, hope that suffering could be lessened, that balance could be restored, that the invisible torment of the headache could finally be eased. As we step away from this chamber of steel and blood, we carry with us not only the image of strange cures, but the reminder that humanity has always sought relief, even at great cost. The barber surgeon's blade was sharp, often cruel, but it was wielded in the service of a universal truth, the longing to live without pain. Step away now from the barber surgeon's dim chamber of blades and blood. The air grows lighter, the smell of iron replaced by the faint scent of beeswax, candles, and incense. In the medieval world, not all cures for headaches were carved with steel or drained through veins. Many were whispered in the stillness of chapels, carried in the folds of garments, or bound close to the skin. For in an age when the divine was present in every shadow, and spirit was thought to dwell in every object, pain was not merely a matter of flesh and humor, it was also a matter of faith. To understand this, one must recall how medieval people saw the world. Suffering was rarely viewed as random or meaningless. A headache might be punishment for sin, a trial sent by God, or the sign of a malicious spirit at work. And if invisible forces could cause pain, then invisible forces could also cure it. This belief gave rise to a vast world of charms, prayers, and amulets, each one a bridge between the visible and the unseen. One of the most common remedies was the recitation of specific prayers or holy verses, believed to ease the burden of pain. A priest, monk, or even a layperson might murmur the words of the Psalms over a sufferer, letting the rhythm of sacred language weave calm through the body. Certain verses, particularly those invoking peace or healing, were favored as remedies. For headaches, lines asking for relief from affliction, or for the calming of troubled spirits, were often spoken slowly, like a lullaby to the weary mind. Sometimes these prayers were not only spoken but also written down. Small slips of parchment, bearing verses of scripture, or the names of saints, were folded carefully and worn close to the body. These written charms were thought to radiate protective power, guarding the wearer against both spiritual attack and physical pain. A parchment inscribed with the Lord's Prayer might be tied around the neck or sewn into clothing, where it lay hidden but always present. The words, though silent, were believed to continue their work, shielding the sufferer from the unseen forces that caused headaches. Alongside written charms were physical amulets, objects thought to carry natural or divine power. A pebble taken from a holy spring, a fragment of bone from a saint's relic, or a small cross of carved wood might all serve as protection. Some amulets were tied to the body with string, others hung around the neck, still others tucked into pouches worn beneath the clothing. For headaches, amulets often included stones believed to cool or calm the head. Agate, for instance, was prized for its supposed ability to soothe pain and bring balance. Amber, too, was sometimes worn, believed to hold the warmth of the sun and drive away illness. More curious still were herbal amulets, bundles of plants sewn into cloth and worn close to the skin. Lavender, rosemary, and rue were all thought to hold protective powers. These herbs might be gathered at specific times, perhaps under a waxing moon, or on a holy feast day, to increase their potency. Carried in a pouch, they were meant not just to repel headaches, but also to guard against the evil eye, a glance of envy or malice that was often blamed for sudden pain. Yet not all cures were gentle or subtle. Some involved the recitation of magical incantations, phrases that mingled the sacred and the superstitious. These might call upon the names of angels, saints, or even obscure spirits, demanding that the pain depart. Though condemned by church authorities as dangerous or heretical, such practices persisted in villages and homes where desperation often outweighed doctrine. A whispered charm, repeated 3 times over a bowl of water, might be drunk in hopes of cooling the fevered head. The rhythm of the words, half prayer and half spell, carried a power that comforted, even if it did not cure. Perhaps the most powerful of all faith-based remedies was the touch of relics. To press one's head against the reliquary of a saint, to brush against the cloth said to have touched Christ, or to drink water in which a relic had been dipped, these acts were thought to bring healing through divine grace. Pilgrims traveled long distances, carrying their headaches and ailments to holy sites, where miracles were said to occur. In the hush of candlelit chapels, heads bowed beneath gilded reliquaries, countless sufferers sought relief through faith. Why did these practices endure? Why did so many place their hope in charms, amulets, and prayers? The answer lies partly in the psychology of comfort. To hold a charm, to wear an amulet, to whisper a prayer, these acts gave sufferers a sense of control, of agency, in the face of relentless pain. A headache, invisible and unrelenting, could make one feel helpless. But to believe that relief was only a word or an object away, restored some measure of power. Even when the pain did not fully leave, the burden of despair was lightened. In this way, faith-based remedies mirrored the deeper rhythm of medieval life. For every action in the world of flesh, there was a parallel in the world of spirit. Just as blood could be let to balance humors, so words could be spoken to balance unseen forces. Just as herbs could cool the brow, so charms could shield the soul. The cure for pain was never only in the body, it was also in the faith of the heart. And so we find woven through the history of headaches, not only blades and herbs, but also whispers and symbols. A parchment folded and tied, a pebble worn on a string, a prayer murmured in the dark. These were as real to the medieval sufferer as any physician's prescription. They carried hope, and hope itself was often the most powerful medicine of all. To understand the strange cures medieval people used for headaches, we must first step into their way of seeing the body, the mind, and the world around them. Pain was never a simple matter. It was never dismissed as a passing discomfort. Instead, it was a message, sometimes from the body itself, sometimes from the heavens above, and sometimes from forces more mysterious and unseen. In the medieval worldview, the body was not separated from the soul, nor was it divided into neat categories of nerves, vessels, and tissues, as modern medicine would describe. Instead, the human body was thought to be a delicate balance of forces: warmth and cold, wetness and dryness, good health and corruption. A headache, then, was not merely pressure on the temples or strain behind the eyes. It was a symptom of imbalance, a ripple in the harmony of the human form, a sign that something deep within had been disturbed. This belief was grounded in the humoral theory, inherited from the writings of ancient Greek and Roman physicians, particularly Galen. According to this framework, the body contained 4 vital fluids, or humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Each humor was linked with qualities of hot or cold, moist or dry, and with temperaments of the human spirit. To be well was to live in balance. To be ill was to tip that balance toward excess or deficiency. A headache might mean too much heat in the head, an overflow of blood, or a sluggish congestion of phlegm. But humoral theory was not the only lens through which headaches were understood. Illness was also deeply spiritual. Medieval people lived in a world where the divine and the natural were interwoven. To suffer pain was sometimes to be tested by God, sometimes to be punished for sin, and sometimes to be reminded of the frailty of human flesh. Headaches could therefore be interpreted as signs of guilt, or as warnings that the soul had strayed from the right path. The cure, then, might involve prayer, confession, or acts of penance alongside more earthly remedies. Consider the experience of a villager sitting in a small church, their head throbbing as the bells toll. To them, the sound of pain echoing inside their skull might not be understood as a neurological condition, but as a reminder of divine presence, uncomfortable but meaningful. Pain was never pointless, it always carried weight. At the same time, superstition added another layer of explanation. The unseen forces of the world, spirits, demons, witches, the phases of the moon, were believed to influence the health of the body. A headache might be caused by the evil eye, a curse from a jealous neighbor, or the ill-fortuned alignment of the stars. In this sense, headaches were not purely personal, but tied to the larger universe. To heal was not simply to take medicine, but to restore harmony between oneself and the forces beyond human control. This worldview meant that the medieval person approached headaches with a mixture of fear and reverence. Unlike a cut, which could be bound with cloth, or a fever, which could be observed and measured, a headache was an invisible torment. It could not be seen or touched, only felt. Its invisible nature gave it power, making it seem closer to mystery, closer to the realm of the soul. The very invisibility of pain often deepened its meaning. Imagine for a moment the unease this created. You could wake with a sharp pain behind your eyes, and wonder, had you eaten something impure? Had your humors slipped out of balance during the night? Or was it possible that someone had whispered a curse, sending invisible arrows into your skull? In a world without modern science, every possibility seemed valid, and each demanded its own cure. Headaches also carried a social dimension. If a nobleman complained of pain, his ailment might be taken as an omen, even a matter of political importance. Was his headache a warning from heaven about his leadership? Was it a sign of weakness in a ruler who must remain strong? For peasants, however, the interpretation was often simpler: a burden from work, hunger, or the wrath of unseen forces. Still, the cure, whether noble or peasant, was always framed by the same belief: pain was not random, but purposeful. It is also worth remembering that medieval people did not separate the mental from the physical as we often do. Emotional anguish, grief or worry, could easily be described as causing headaches. If a mother mourned a lost child, or a farmer fretted over failed crops, the pain in the head was a visible manifestation of invisible sorrow. To soothe such pain was to soothe not just the body, but the spirit itself. In this way, the nature of headaches in the medieval world was layered and complex. A single pain could be explained in many ways: humoral imbalance, spiritual punishment, demonic influence, or emotional distress. To us this might seem contradictory, but to them it was a web of meanings, each strand holding truth. Pain was not to be dismissed, it was to be understood. This understanding set the stage for the wide variety of cures that would emerge. Because headaches could have so many possible causes, the range of remedies was vast. Some were grounded in plants and minerals, drawing on centuries of herbal tradition. Others were deeply spiritual, relying on prayer, relics, and blessings. Still others crossed into the realm of magic and superstition, with whispered spells or amulets worn close to the skin. Each cure reflected the belief that to treat the headache was to address not only the body, but the whole person, their soul, their fate, their place in the universe. As we leave this section, picture a medieval healer listening carefully as a patient describes their pain. There are no charts, no scans, no precise measurements. Instead, there are careful observations: the color of the patient's skin, the rhythm of their pulse, the sound of their voice, the sorrow in their eyes. A diagnosis was less about isolating a single cause and more about interpreting the person's entire condition, their place in a world filled with divine will and natural forces. The headache, then, was not just an ailment. It was a symbol. It was a signpost pointing toward imbalance, punishment, or mystery. And because of this, its cures were equally symbolic, equally rich with meaning. To treat a headache was to restore order where chaos had intruded. And so, as we journey forward, we will see how this layered understanding of pain gave rise to remedies, both gentle and brutal, both wise and strange, remedies that today may seem bewildering, even shocking. But in their time, each was logical, each was meaningful, each was a response to the complex and symbolic nature of pain. In the medieval world, medicine was not confined to herbs, prayers, or rituals. Above all of these loomed the stars. To cure an ailment such as a headache, one might first look not to the body, nor even to the church, but to the sky. For it was widely believed that the heavens themselves, sun, moon, and planets, governed human health. The stars were not distant fires in the void, but guiding forces shaping blood, mood, and pain. Imagine a sick room, late at night. A patient lies in bed, holding his head in agony, while outside the moon shines over tiled rooftops. A physician arrives, but before touching the patient, before offering any herb or potion, he draws from his satchel a chart of the heavens. With careful hand, he marks the positions of the planets at the moment of the headache's onset. Only then can he prescribe treatment, for in his view, the pain is a signal not only of imbalance within the body, but also of celestial influence without. The foundation of this belief lay in the doctrine of correspondences, the conviction that the human body reflected the cosmos. Each planet ruled a part of the body: the sun, the heart, the moon, the brain, and fluids; Mercury, the nervous system; Mars, the blood and temper; Jupiter, the liver; Venus, the reproductive system; and Saturn, the bones. A headache, therefore, was rarely just a headache. It was often interpreted as the moon's troubling influence, or perhaps Saturn casting its heavy shadow upon the mind. For many physicians, especially those trained in universities like Bologna, Paris, or Oxford, astrological charts were as important as herbal remedies. Learned men pored over texts, translated from Arabic and Greek, such as the works of Hippocrates, Galen, and later Avicenna, which all tied medicine to celestial observation. They taught that one must never bleed a patient, nor administer certain potions, unless the stars were favorable. A wrong choice of timing could, they believed, turn healing into harm. Headaches in particular were often linked to the moon. Just as the moon governed the tides, so too was it thought to govern the fluids of the body. A full moon might cause excess moisture in the brain, leading to throbbing pain. Conversely, a waning moon could signify dryness, bringing sharp, stabbing headaches. Remedies were timed to the lunar cycle. Purges, baths, and potions were to be given when the moon was in certain signs of the zodiac, avoided when in others. Consider also the influence of zodiac signs. Each sign, from Aries to Pisces, ruled a section of the body. Aries ruled the head, and so headaches were seen as the mark of Aries in turmoil. If the patient's birth sign conflicted with the current alignment of planets, pain was thought inevitable. An astrologer physician might warn Mars in Aries brings heat to the head. Beware fevers and burning pain. A sufferer could thus see his torment, not as random, but as written in the stars. Astrology also influenced the timing of remedies. If a patient complained of a headache during the hour of Saturn, the physician might withhold strong medicine, believing Saturn's cold and heavy influence would blunt its effect. Instead, treatment might be delayed until Jupiter's hour, associated with growth, harmony, and benevolence. In this way, healing became not only a matter of what was given, but also when it was given. Even common folk, though less versed in charts, shared a belief in the stars. Farmers noted how the moon affected planting and harvest. Why should it not affect the body as well? A villager with a pounding head might mutter that it was the moon's doing, or that Mars was rising in a fiery sky. Astrology lent meaning to suffering. The heavens themselves seemed to acknowledge the pain. Monasteries, too, did not escape this influence. Though the church often regarded astrology with suspicion, monks sometimes consulted the skies when compiling medical texts. In illuminated manuscripts, we find a zodiac man, a figure with astrological signs marked upon his body, showing which star ruled which limb or organ. To study such a diagram was to bridge the gap between heaven and earth, to see in the human frame the map of the cosmos. Astrology was not mere superstition, it was a system of order, a way to make sense of a world filled with uncertainty. Headaches, unpredictable and cruel, could feel like chaos within the skull. To say they were caused by Saturn's heaviness or the moon's fullness was to restore meaning, to make suffering part of a cosmic pattern. And for the patient lying in the dark, this belief itself could bring comfort. But astrology was not without its risks. By placing so much trust in the stars, physicians sometimes delayed urgent treatments, waiting for the right hour. A patient in agony might be left without relief, all because Venus was not in a favorable position. At times, a healer's reliance on the heavens could overshadow practical remedies. And yet, for centuries, the alignment of planets and stars continued to guide the treatment of pain. It is tempting to dismiss such practices, but even today traces remain. We speak of being moody at the full moon, of feeling the pull of tides within ourselves. The link between cosmic rhythm and human health lingers, however faintly. In the medieval mind, this connection was not faint, but absolute. And so the sufferer of a headache did not only swallow herbs or whisper prayers, he looked upward. The night sky was a vast mirror, in which his pain was reflected. To treat the head was to consult the heavens, to believe that relief might descend from the stars themselves. In the quiet of the medieval night, as a patient closed his eyes against the throbbing of his skull, the heavens wheeled above. The moonlight fell through the window, and the stars marked their endless courses. Perhaps the pain would pass when the moon waned, or when Jupiter rose. Perhaps the alignment would shift, and the weight upon the head would lift. In this hope, both healer and sufferer endured, believing always that the cure for pain lay written in the sky. To understand the medieval view of headaches, we must step into a world governed not by chemistry or neurology, but by the four humours. These humours, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, were believed to shape not only the body, but also the mind and soul. Health meant balance. Illness meant imbalance. Every ache, fever, or pain was thought to be the direct result of one humour rising above the rest, like a turbulent sea, disturbing the harmony of the body. For headaches, this framework was the cornerstone of diagnosis. Physicians, monks, and even local healers would begin by asking not just about the pain itself, but about its quality, its timing, and its temperament. Was the headache sharp and burning? Was it heavy and dull? Did it come with nausea, dizziness, or melancholy thoughts? Each detail was a clue pointing toward which humour had taken control. Blood, warm and moist, was the humour of life and energy. An excess of blood, physicians believed, caused the veins in the head to swell, producing a pounding, throbbing headache. Such pain was often worse in the heat of summer or after a meal of rich meats and wine, foods thought to fuel the blood's vitality. The patient might be described as flushed, restless, and overfull of life's fire. The cure, bleeding. A physician might open a vein at the temple or the arm, letting the excess blood flow out, with the belief that pain would ebb as the body's balance was restored. Phlegm, cold and moist, was sluggish and heavy. When phlegm dominated the head, it was thought to bring headaches marked by dull pressure, fogginess, and lethargy. Such sufferers often complained of heaviness behind the eyes, of a slow mind, of difficulty rising from bed. To treat this, physicians recommended warming therapies, hot compresses, pungent herbs, such as ginger or pepper, and avoidance of cold, damp places. Patients were often advised to drink spiced wine, to breathe in steam, or to sit by a fire until the phlegm was thinned and dispersed. Yellow bile, hot and dry, was the humor of heat and irritability. Too much of it was thought to produce burning headaches, sharp pains, and sudden fits of anger. A man with such a headache might feel his skull aflame, his temper quick to rise, his eyes reddened with fire. To balance yellow bile, cooling remedies were prescribed: cucumber, lettuce, cooling baths, or herbal tonics designed to quench the fire. Physicians might also recommend bloodletting in small amounts, believing it helped to draw off the excess heat. Black bile, cold and dry, was the darkest of the humors. It was associated with melancholy, sadness, and heaviness of spirit. When black bile ruled the head, the headache was thought to be heavy, lingering, and accompanied by gloom. A patient might lie in silence, pressing their temples, speaking of despair, or withdrawing from light and sound. To treat such a state, healers prescribed uplifting foods, music, prayer, and gentle tonics, such as honey, figs, or sweet wine. In some cases, purges were recommended to cleanse the body of this dark substance and restore cheer to the spirit. It is striking how closely these descriptions mirror what we now call migraine, tension headache, and stress-related pain. Though their explanations were rooted in humors, medieval observers were astute in noticing the differences in headache types. They understood that some were fiery and quick, others heavy and dull, and still others lingering and sorrowful. In their own language, they were mapping the varied forms of suffering that even modern medicine still works to fully understand. The role of seasons was also critical in humor theory. Each season was tied to one of the humors: spring with blood, summer with yellow bile, autumn with black bile, and winter with phlegm. A physician treating a headache in midsummer might assume yellow bile was the cause and recommend cooling foods, baths, and avoidance of direct sun. By contrast, a headache in winter might be blamed on sluggish phlegm, treated with warming soups and spiced drinks. Thus, headaches were never seen in isolation. They were always part of a larger natural rhythm, woven into the cycles of the year. Diagnosis often included close attention to the patient's complexion. Was the skin ruddy or pale? Was the pulse quick or slow? Did the eyes gleam with fire, or droop with exhaustion? Each sign was interpreted through the lens of humors. A red face suggested excess blood, a pale, clammy one hinted at phlegm, dark circles, and a sullen mood pointed toward black bile. In this way, the healer read the body as a text, translating its signs into the language of humors. Treatment, too, was carefully aligned with humor theory. Beyond bleeding, purging, and diet, there were countless remedies designed to restore balance. Herbal infusions of sage, rosemary, or chamomile were thought to cool the blood or lift the spirit. Mustard plasters might be applied to the back of the neck to draw heat away from the head. Even baths were prescribed with precision: hot baths for phlegmatic headaches, cool ones for choleric pains, sweet-scented waters for melancholic states. Each act of care was part of a delicate dance, balancing opposites: heat with cold, dryness with moisture, heaviness with lightness. Importantly, the four humors explained not only the pain, but the person. Someone prone to frequent headaches was seen as having a particular temperament. A sanguine person, lively and passionate, was vulnerable to blood's excess. A phlegmatic one, calm but slow, suffered from heaviness and dull aches. A choleric individual, fiery and ambitious, endured sharp, burning headaches. And the melancholic, thoughtful but somber, struggled with lingering pain tied to despair. In this way, headaches were never merely medical, they were deeply personal, shaping identity and destiny. The concept of prevention also played a role. Physicians advised regulating diet, exercise, and sleep to keep the humors in balance. Too much wine, too little rest, or too many indulgences could tip the scales and bring on pain. Moderation was praised as the surest guard against headaches. Even emotions were regulated. Anger was said to inflame yellow bile, sadness to feed black bile. Thus controlling one's passions was as vital as taking one's medicine. And while the theory of humors seems strange today, it provided medieval sufferers with a sense of structure. Pain was not random, it was explainable. It was part of a grand design, a balance that had momentarily slipped. To believe this was to find meaning even in agony. The patient was not helpless. There were ways to bleed, purge, heat, cool, and restore. In a world often chaotic and dangerous, this sense of order was itself a kind of comfort. In monasteries and households alike, the language of humors became second nature. Mothers explained children's fevers through it. Monks recorded remedies according to it. A headache was more than an ailment. It was a reflection of the entire cosmos, played out within the fragile vessel of the human body. And so when the pain struck, the sufferer and healer together sought not only relief, but harmony. To balance the humors was to restore peace within, to bring the body back into tune with the world around it. For the medieval mind, this was healing at its deepest, not simply silencing pain, but reweaving the threads of balance that connected man to nature, body to soul, and earth to the heavens above. Step into the quiet, stone-clad halls of a medieval monastery. The scent of incense and candle smoke hangs in the air, mingling with the faint, earthy aroma of dried herbs stored on wooden shelves. Here in the stillness of cloistered life, monks devoted themselves not only to prayer and study, but also to the care of the sick. For headaches, which haunted the minds and bodies of peasants and nobles alike, these spiritual healers offered a combination of medicine, ritual, and faith. Monasteries were centers of knowledge. Within their scriptoriums, illuminated manuscripts detailed remedies for ailments, including headaches. The text was rarely dry or purely clinical. It combined practical instructions with spiritual guidance. Recipes for herbal infusions were interwoven with prayers, invocations to saints, and instructions for fasting or penance. In this way, the cure was as much spiritual as it was physical, a reflection of the belief that pain could arise from both body and soul. The monastic garden was a living pharmacy. Rows of rosemary, sage, lavender, and chamomile were tended with care. Each plant had its purpose, harvested at precise times according to lunar cycles or feast days, then prepared for use in infusions, poultices, or scented baths. Chamomile, gentle and calming, was used to ease tension in the head. Sage, thought to clear the mind, was often brewed into teas or applied as compresses. The very act of walking among these herbs, inhaling their fragrance, was considered restorative. But the most distinctive element of monastic healing was the integration of spiritual remedies. Prayer was central. A monk might recite the Psalms over a patient slowly and deliberately, the cadence designed to soothe both mind and body. Holy water was sprinkled upon the forehead, often combined with the touch of a relic, perhaps a fragment of a saint's bone or cloth. These objects were believed to carry divine power, able to draw pain away from the sufferer, replacing it with spiritual fortitude. Fasting and penance were sometimes prescribed. A headache could be interpreted as a manifestation of sin, spiritual imbalance, or moral failing. To relieve it, a sufferer might abstain from certain foods, sleep lightly, or dedicate themselves to prayer. This approach emphasized the unity of body, mind, and spirit. Healing required not only medicine, but also moral and spiritual reflection. The act of self-discipline itself was thought to realign humors, cleanse the body, and focus the mind. Monks also employed ritualized physical therapies. Hot compresses or scented baths might be combined with whispered prayers, creating an environment where the senses were gently attended to, while the spirit was uplifted. Music, too, played a role. The soft chanting of the choir, or the slow tolling of a bell created an atmosphere conducive to relaxation and restoration. The aim was not only to treat the headache, but to induce a state of calm where the patient could sink into gentle rest, letting the pain diminish naturally. Charms and amulets were often used alongside herbal remedies. Tiny crosses, medallions or pieces of blessed cloth could be tied around the head or worn on the body. These objects acted as focal points for faith, lending comfort through their symbolism, even if they had no direct physiological effect. In combination with herbs and prayer, they provided a holistic approach, the mind reassured, the spirit bolstered, the body cared for. Monastic physicians were particularly attentive to timing and observation. Treatments were often scheduled according to the hours of the day, the cycles of the moon, or the alignment of the stars. Even sleep was regulated. Monks advised resting in dim light, avoiding noise, and ensuring the body was neither overheated nor chilled. In this careful attention to detail, we see the roots of modern holistic medicine: observation, environment, and ritual, all contributing to well-being. Education within the monastery emphasized both theory and practice. Novice monks learned to identify plants, mix potions, and perform basic procedures. They also studied texts from Greek, Roman, and Arabic sources, combining empirical observation with spiritual understanding. This dual approach reflected a worldview in which physical and metaphysical were inseparable, a principle especially relevant to something as mysterious and persistent as headaches. The patient experience in the monastery was intimate and reassuring. Unlike the harsh procedures of barber surgeons, monastic healing emphasized care and attention. The sufferer might lie on a simple bed, head cushioned, as the monk prepared a fragrant herbal infusion, murmured prayers, or applied gentle compresses. Each movement was deliberate, measured, and imbued with the sense that both human skill and divine guidance were at work. The environment itself, serene and orderly, contributed to healing. For some, this combination of medicinal, spiritual, and psychological care was profoundly effective. Pain often receded not only because of herbs or treatment, but because the mind and spirit were soothed. The belief that divine presence was near, that rituals had purpose, and that the body was being cared for in a sacred space all combined to offer relief. In a world without modern analgesics, this holistic approach often provided comfort as powerful as any potion. Yet monastic healing was not universal or infallible. Access depended on location and status. The distant villager might never see a monastery's care, and while many remedies were beneficial, others were symbolic rather than therapeutic. Still, the approach demonstrated a deep understanding of human suffering, that pain is not merely physical, that the mind and spirit shape experience, and that calm, ritual, and attention can relieve even the most stubborn headaches. As we leave the quiet of the cloister, we carry with us the lesson of medieval monastic healing, that the path to relief is as much about presence, observation, and ritual as it is about herbs or potions. Headaches were not merely battled with ingredients or incisions, they were approached with a gentle, holistic wisdom that embraced the entire human experience. In the tapestry of medieval medicine, monasteries shine as places where knowledge, compassion, and spirituality intertwine. They remind us that healing, at its most profound, is not simply the absence of pain but the restoration of balance, peace, and hope. The medieval imagination knew no bounds when it came to curing headaches. Beyond the herbs, prayers, and humours, there existed a shadowy realm of remedies that might seem strange, alarming, or even fantastical to modern eyes. These treatments, drawn from distant lands, folklore, or the ingenious minds of local healers, combined observation, superstition, and daring experimentation. To witness their practice was to step into a world where hope and fear walked hand in hand. One of the most curious practices involved animal parts. The use of crushed beetles, powdered bones, or the fat of certain animals was widespread. A pinch of dried lizard, mixed into a potion or rubbed upon the temples, was believed to absorb the heat or tension causing pain. Feathers from particular birds were sometimes ground into ointments, their supposed properties aligned with the spirit of the creature. Such remedies were not purely symbolic. They were thought to transfer strength, coolness, or vitality from the animal to the human body, bridging the natural and supernatural. Another striking category of exotic treatment was sympathetic magic, where objects resembling the body part in pain were used to draw away illness. A small wax head, carved carefully and pierced with tiny needles, might be used to relieve a headache. The belief was that the pain in the real head would transfer to the wax model. This principle extended to herbs and roots shaped like heads or brain matter, which were brewed into teas or worn as charms. To the medieval mind, resemblance was power, form, and function were entwined in ways we now recognize as magical thinking, yet it held genuine comfort for the sufferer. Some treatments involved substances imported from faraway lands. Cinnamon, cloves, and saffron, treasured for both flavor and supposed medicinal virtue, were incorporated into potions and compresses. Their warmth and pungency were believed to draw out excess humors, calm agitation, and restore balance. Precious minerals, like crushed pearls or powdered gemstones, were sometimes added to concoctions, not for taste, but for their symbolic and spiritual properties. Each ingredient carried a story, a belief, a hope that it would reach into the hidden layers of the body and ease the pain. The medieval mind also embraced the elemental qualities of remedies. Fire, water, air, and earth were all invoked in treatment. Hot stones placed on the forehead, or cold water poured over the temples, were believed to rebalance internal energies. Steam from boiling herbs was inhaled, filling the lungs and soothing the head. Even mud or clay was applied to absorb excess heat or moisture. In this we see a direct extension of the humoral theory: heat and cold, wet and dry, applied in tangible form to restore harmony. Among the most extreme of treatments were those that involved blood and bodily fluids beyond standard bleeding. Some recipes called for the use of powdered menstrual blood or urine from specific animals, believed to have cooling or protective properties. These methods were controversial even in their time, practiced in secret or passed down in whispered instruction, but they reflect a mindset in which nothing was too strange if it promised relief. Pain demanded ingenuity. Certain cures were tied to ritualized exposure. Headaches could be treated by sleeping under the stars, believing that night air and moonlight drew away pain. Others involved walking barefoot on specific stones, or drinking water from holy springs at precise hours. Pilgrimages to distant shrines were made with the hope that proximity to relics or sacred sites could transfer divine healing to the sufferer. In these practices, geography, timing, and ritual merged into a single act of care. Some of the more inventive healers combined several methods into complex, layered remedies. A potion might include crushed herbs, powdered minerals, and a drop of animal oil, all consumed while a prayer was recited under a specific moon phase. Compresses could be applied to the temples, incense burned nearby, and a wax model placed beside the patient to absorb lingering pain. The combination of sensory, spiritual, and symbolic elements created an immersive experience that calmed the mind, even if the physiological effect was uncertain. Exotic treatments also reflected the trade and cultural exchange of the medieval world. Arab medical texts introduced new herbs and techniques to Europe, while knowledge from Byzantine and North African sources enriched local traditions. A healer in England might use an imported resin from the Middle East, combined with a local herb, demonstrating a blend of global knowledge and local practice. In this way, headaches became a canvas upon which centuries of accumulated wisdom, myth, and observation were applied. Yet alongside their ingenuity lay risk and unpredictability. Some animal products carried toxins. Exotic minerals could irritate the skin or stomach. Misapplied potions caused nausea, dizziness, or worse. And because the efficacy of these treatments was never tested systematically, success was as much a matter of belief, timing, and luck as of chemistry. Even so, the willingness to try these remedies reflects the courage and desperation of those seeking relief. Pain demanded action, no matter how strange it seemed. Despite the danger, these remedies also reveal a profound truth. Medieval medicine was not purely superstitious. It was rooted in observation, trial, and adaptation. A particular herb or animal product might be repeated generation after generation because it seemed to help. Practices we now call magical were, for them, both symbolic and practical, comforting the mind while addressing the body. The exotic and bizarre were inseparable from hope and care. We can imagine the experience of the sufferer, lying in a dim chamber, the head throbbing, while fragrant smoke curls through the air. A small wax model rests nearby, and the healer prepares a complex mixture of herbs, powders, and oils. Each step carries intention, ritual, and belief. The patient's mind is engaged, focused, reassured, and soothed. Relief may follow from the remedy itself, or from the profound psychological support that these elaborate practices provided. Ultimately, the exotic and bizarre treatments of the medieval world were a testament to human creativity in the face of suffering. They remind us that medicine is not only science but also art, imagination, and culture. The lengths to which people went to ease headaches, sometimes strange, sometimes dangerous, speak to the universality of human pain and the enduring desire to find relief. Through these remedies, we glimpse a world where knowledge, myth, and hope intertwined. The boundaries of medicine were wide and flexible, shaped by observation, belief, and experience. Headaches, a seemingly simple ailment, became a field in which the extraordinary and the everyday merged, revealing the richness of the human search for healing. Even now, centuries later, these exotic treatments capture our imagination. They invite us to step into a time when the line between reality and symbolism was permeable, when hope itself was a powerful medicine, and when every effort, no matter how strange, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In medieval society, headaches were never experienced in isolation. Pain was embedded in the rhythms of daily life, shaped by class, occupation, diet, and belief. For the nobleman, a pounding head might be a minor inconvenience, addressed with imported herbs, attentive servants, or a visit to a physician. For the peasant, it could mean days of suffering with little relief, endured amidst hard labor, meager meals, and exposure to the elements. Pain, therefore, was not only physical, but profoundly social, reflecting the conditions of the life one led. Daily labor played a crucial role. Farmers, bending over fields from dawn to dusk, were exposed to the sun, dust, and fatigue, all factors believed to provoke headaches. Artisans, working with dyes, metals, or heavy machinery, risked eye strain, tension, and injury. Even the simplest household chores, grinding grain, carrying water, or cooking over an open fire, could contribute to the dull, persistent pains that so many endured. In this context, headaches were more than an inconvenience. They were a constant companion in the rhythm of work and survival. Diet was another social factor shaping headaches. The wealthy had access to spices, sugar, and imported foods that were thought to affect the humors differently than the coarse bread, vegetables, and ale available to the lower classes. Rich meats and wines could excite blood, provoking fiery headaches. Overly cold or damp foods could aggravate phlegm, leading to heaviness and dull pressure in the skull. Medieval dietetics, the careful regulation of food according to the humors, was both medical advice and social guidance, ensuring that each class maintained what was thought to be proper balance. Cultural beliefs shaped the experience of pain as well. A headache might be interpreted as divine warning or punishment, a manifestation of sin, or a test of patience. Religious observances, prayers, fasts, pilgrimages, were sometimes prescribed not only for spiritual reasons, but because they were believed to influence the body's balance. Saints associated with healing, like Saint John of God or Saint Apollonia, were invoked for relief. Their images were carried in homes, small charms worn around the neck, and prayers recited in hope of easing suffering. Literature and chronicles reveal that headaches were also recognized in communal life. References appear in letters, diaries, and poetry, indicating that pain was part of the shared human condition. Chronic sufferers were often described with sympathy, sometimes even reverence for their endurance. In courts and noble households, physicians kept detailed notes of recurring headaches, associating them with temperament, diet, and lifestyle. In peasant villages, remedies were more informal, relying on herbal lore, charms, and the guidance of local wise women. Across society, headaches were both intimate and universal. The understanding of gender roles also influenced headache treatment. Women, often responsible for domestic work and childrearing, were thought to experience certain types of headaches more frequently, linked to menstrual cycles or the burdens of household labor. Remedies were adapted accordingly, Cooling herbs, gentle compresses, or spiritual prayers were common. Men, more often engaged in outdoor labor or martial activities, received treatments focused on heat, bloodletting, or stimulating potions. In both cases, the social expectations of behavior shaped both the perception of pain and the methods used to relieve it. Headaches also intersected with seasonal and environmental factors. Winter, with its damp, cold air, could provoke phlegmatic pains, while summer heat aggravated blood and yellow bile. Storms, changes in barometric pressure, and even lunar phases were believed to influence susceptibility. People adapted their routines in anticipation of these factors, avoiding strenuous work during heat waves, seeking shelter from cold drafts, or performing rituals aligned with celestial cycles. Pain was thus experienced as a living part of the environment, in constant dialogue with the natural world. Occupational and social hierarchies influenced access to treatment. A nobleman could afford imported herbs, exotic oils, or a personal physician. Peasants often relied on local knowledge, charms, herbal teas, or folk remedies passed down through generations. Apprentices, servants and laborers sometimes endured pain without intervention, normalizing discomfort as part of daily existence. In this way, a headache was not merely a medical concern, but a marker of social position, shaping expectations, remedies and tolerance. Communal practices often intersected with medical advice. Towns and villages shared remedies, some as simple as drinking chamomile tea or applying mustard plasters, others as complex as ritualized purges or moon-timed herbal infusions. Wisdom was passed orally. Neighbors advised neighbors, mothers taught daughters, and itinerant healers offered guidance along trade routes. The social circulation of knowledge ensured that even those without formal medical access could participate in the culture of care. Headaches also carried moral and psychological significance. Pain was linked to temper, character, or divine favor. A fiery temperament might provoke frequent headaches, interpreted as a lesson in patience or humility. Chronic sufferers were sometimes seen as spiritually sensitive, attuned to the fluctuations of humors, seasons, and celestial influence. The interpretation of pain thus shaped social expectations, personal identity, and the narrative of suffering within the community. Religion and ritual infused social life with structure around headaches. Holy water, charms, pilgrimages, and saintly intercessions were woven into daily routines. Prayers and processions addressed not only the spiritual, but also the corporeal, reinforcing the connection between body, mind, and society. Participation in communal rites, even when primarily symbolic, offered psychological relief, a sense of solidarity, and reassurance that pain was neither random nor meaningless. The shared experience of headaches helped form a sense of cultural continuity. Across centuries, the understanding of pain, its causes and its remedies persisted in manuscripts, oral traditions, and household practices. Even as knowledge evolved, the social and cultural frameworks surrounding headaches, class, gender, occupation, ritual and environment, remained deeply influential. Pain was never private, it was observed, interpreted, and addressed within the intricate web of human relationships and societal norms. In this light, medieval headaches were more than physiological events, they were markers of human experience, deeply entwined with social structures, cultural beliefs, and communal practices. They reveal a world where medicine, ritual, labor, diet, and faith all intersected. Understanding pain meant understanding life itself, in its daily struggles, seasonal rhythms, and spiritual dimensions. And so the headache becomes a window into medieval society, its values, its hierarchies, and its ways of coping with the universal challenge of suffering. In this context, we see not only the medical ingenuity of the age, but also the profound connection between human experience and the social world, where even pain was woven into the fabric of community, culture, and belief. As the medieval era gradually gave way to the Renaissance, the world of medicine began to shift. The humors, the stars, and the mystical remedies that had dominated treatment for centuries slowly encountered the scrutiny of observation, experimentation, and reason. Headaches, long understood through symbolic and holistic frameworks, became subjects of scientific curiosity. Scholars, physicians, and philosophers began to question old assumptions, seeking explanations grounded in anatomy, physiology, and empirical evidence. Imagine a quiet study in Florence or Paris, candlelight flickering over thick manuscripts. A physician pores over anatomical sketches, the contours of the skull and brain now visible on parchment. Whereas previous generations had relied on humors or celestial influence, these new thinkers examined vessels, nerves, and the flow of fluids within the body. Pain was no longer merely a reflection of imbalance or a divine signal. It was a phenomenon with a physical, observable origin. The patient, lying in discomfort, became the center of careful study. During the Renaissance, the revival of classical texts from Greece and Rome played a pivotal role. Galen's work, long authoritative, was studied alongside newly translated texts from Arabic scholars. Physicians began to reconcile traditional knowledge with observation, testing the effects of herbs, diet, and even bloodletting more systematically. This era emphasized documentation and reasoning, recording which treatments alleviated headaches, and under what conditions. Slowly the magical and mystical began to be questioned, though not entirely abandoned. The rise of anatomical studies further transformed understanding. Dissections, once taboo, allowed scholars to see the brain, blood vessels, and nerves firsthand. Knowledge of circulation, later refined by William Harvey, illuminated how blood flow might contribute to head pain. Observing the effects of tension, posture, or trauma provided explanations that humors alone could not. Headaches were increasingly understood as symptoms with physical roots, rather than messages from the heavens or spirits. Yet the transition was gradual. Many Renaissance physicians still integrated older wisdom with newer discoveries. Astrology continued to influence the timing of treatments, and humoral theory remained a useful guide for diet and lifestyle. Remedies were layered herbal infusions, careful observation of symptoms, and spiritual or ritualized practices all coexisted. This hybrid approach reflects the delicate balance between tradition and innovation as society navigated the shift from mystical to empirical medicine. Printing technology accelerated the spread of medical knowledge. Texts describing headaches, their causes and treatments, could now reach a wider audience from university-trained physicians to literate laypeople. Manuals detailed herbal remedies, bathing techniques, and dietary advice with unprecedented precision. Illustrations of the human body, sometimes overlaid with humoral and astrological charts, provided a visual bridge between medieval belief and emerging science. Patients could read, understand, and participate in their own care, a concept almost unimaginable centuries earlier. The social context also evolved. Urbanization brought new stresses, crowded streets, polluted water, and long hours of labor that influenced the prevalence of headaches. Physicians began to observe environmental causes alongside internal imbalances. Headaches were increasingly analyzed as interactions between body, mind, and environment, a subtle precursor to the holistic approaches of modern medicine. During this period, some treatments became more refined and targeted. Bloodletting, once performed broadly, was administered with careful attention to quantity and site. Herbal remedies were standardized, and experimental observation helped distinguish effective plants from ineffective or harmful ones. This empirical mindset laid the groundwork for pharmacology, where natural substances could be tested, refined, and eventually synthesized into medicines. Headaches, once a mysterious malady, slowly entered the realm of measurable, treatable phenomena. Education and professionalization of medicine further accelerated change. Universities trained physicians to rely on observation, experimentation, and critical thinking. Apprenticeships ensured that knowledge of anatomy, physiology, and treatment was passed on accurately. This focus on systematic learning reduced reliance on anecdote, superstition, or oral tradition, emphasizing instead reproducible results. The headache, once interpreted through the lens of humors, stars, or animal magic, was now a clinical subject, documented and analyzed for both cause and effect. Interestingly, the Renaissance also highlighted the psychological dimensions of pain. Thinkers such as Paracelsus recognized that mental state, emotion, and environment influenced suffering. Stress, fatigue, and emotional turmoil were acknowledged as factors contributing to headaches. Treatments increasingly addressed these dimensions. Quiet spaces, regulated rest, dietary moderation, and gentle exercise were prescribed alongside herbal or mineral remedies. The mind and body were being studied as a unified system, a principle that echoes in modern holistic approaches. By the end of the Renaissance, the foundation for modern headache treatment was emerging. While astrology, humors, and ritual had not disappeared entirely, empirical observation, anatomy, and systematic documentation had begun to dominate. Patients benefited from more consistent, rational care. They could expect treatments tailored to their individual symptoms, rooted in knowledge rather than solely tradition or faith. Yet there is beauty in the medieval approach that persisted: its attention to the patient as a whole person, the integration of mind, body, and spirit, and the recognition that healing is not only physical. Even as modern medicine evolved, echoes of these holistic principles remained valuable. Calm observation, ritual, and care continue to provide psychological comfort, enhancing the effects of scientific treatments. In tracing the evolution from medieval to modern understanding, we see a journey of human ingenuity, observation, and perseverance. Headaches, a universal and often mysterious affliction, inspired centuries of innovation. From humors to herbs, from prayers to anatomical study, each era added layers of insight, gradually transforming suffering into treatable conditions. As we reflect on this history, it becomes clear that modern medicine did not emerge in isolation. It is the product of centuries of curiosity, courage, and care, where every observation, every remedy, and even every superstition contributed to a deeper understanding of the human body. The story of headaches is, in essence, the story of humanity itself, a relentless pursuit of knowledge, comfort, and relief. And so, as we lie in the quiet of our own modern rooms, with the hum of daily life around us, it is remarkable to consider that the gentle remedies of herbs, observation, and care, practiced for centuries, still resonate. The evolution of understanding may have refined and rationalized treatments, but the desire to soothe pain, restore balance, and nurture the human spirit remains unchanged. The medieval world of headache remedies, with its humors, herbs, rituals, and exotic treatments, might seem distant, even strange to the modern observer. Yet, beneath the layers of superstition and antiquated theory lie lessons that remain profoundly relevant today. By exploring these practices, we gain insight not only into the history of medicine, but also into enduring truths about human care, resilience, and the intimate relationship between mind, body, and environment. One of the clearest lessons is the importance of holistic observation. Medieval healers paid close attention to diet, lifestyle, temperament, and environment when treating headaches. They recognized patterns: certain foods exacerbated pain, specific activities provoked tension, and environmental factors, like heat, cold, or humidity, influence the intensity of suffering. Modern medicine often focuses narrowly on symptoms and pharmacology, yet the medieval approach reminds us that health is multifaceted. Observing the totality of a person's life, sleep, work, diet, emotional state, can yield deeper understanding and more effective interventions. Closely linked is the lesson of personalized care. Treatments were rarely uniform. They were adapted to the individual's constitution, temperament, and circumstance. The same headache might require cooling herbs for one patient, warming compresses for another. Monastic healers tailored spiritual and physical remedies to the person, not just the ailment. Today, this principle resonates in personalized medicine and lifestyle interventions. Understanding the uniqueness of each patient, rather than relying solely on standardized prescriptions, enhances both efficacy and patient satisfaction. Another enduring lesson lies in the integration of mind, body, and spirit. Medieval healers understood that pain was not merely a physical phenomenon. Fear, stress, guilt, and emotion could all influence the intensity of a headache. Spiritual remedies, prayer, ritual, and the soothing presence of the healer were not ancillary, they were central to care. Modern research confirms the profound connection between psychological state and pain perception. Techniques such as mindfulness, meditation, relaxation, and supportive environments draw directly from this principle, demonstrating that medieval wisdom anticipated aspects of contemporary holistic practice. The role of environment and ritual is equally striking. The quiet of monasteries, the scent of herbs, the rhythm of chanting, and the structured nature of treatments all contributed to alleviating pain. While modern hospitals often prioritize technology and efficiency, there is growing recognition that calm, predictable environments enhance healing. The medieval focus on ambiance, ceremony, and care underscores the importance of creating spaces where the mind can relax, allowing the body to respond more effectively to treatment. Medieval remedies also highlight the value of experimentation and observation. Though constrained by limited knowledge, healers tried countless combinations of herbs, minerals, and rituals. They observed effects, recorded outcomes, and refined methods. In essence, they practiced an early form of the scientific method. Today, evidence-based medicine formalizes this process, but the underlying principle remains: careful observation, trial, and adaptation are essential for understanding complex ailments like headaches. The integration of cultural knowledge and trade is another lesson. Remedies incorporated plants, minerals, and techniques from distant lands, reflecting an openness to learning and adaptation. This global perspective, long before the modern era of scientific exchange, reminds us that collaboration and cultural openness enrich medicine. Sharing knowledge, blending traditions, and learning from diverse sources can lead to more effective and innovative solutions. Social context, too, offers valuable insight. Medieval remedies were shaped by class, gender, and occupation. The awareness that lifestyle and social conditions influence health remains relevant. Chronic headaches today often correlate with stress, work patterns, and socioeconomic factors. Recognizing and addressing these broader determinants of health, as medieval healers intuitively did, is essential for comprehensive care. The medieval approach also teaches the power of belief and expectation. Even when remedies were symbolic or ritualistic, they often brought relief. Modern studies of the placebo effect show that belief in a treatment can significantly modulate pain perception. Medieval patients experienced tangible benefits from rituals, charms, or carefully prepared potions, not necessarily because of the pharmacological effect, but because the mind and body responded to the ritual of care. This underscores the importance of empathy, attention, and patient engagement in treatment. Another lesson is the importance of patience and gradual care. Many medieval treatments were not immediate fixes. Healing unfolded over days or weeks, requiring attention to diet, rest, herbal preparations, and spiritual alignment. This contrasts with contemporary expectations of instant relief, but emphasizes that sustainable health often requires time, consistency, and gentle nurturing. Headaches, particularly chronic ones, benefit from measured interventions rather than abrupt, purely chemical fixes. The interplay of tradition and innovation provides another insight. While medieval medicine retained ritualistic and symbolic elements, it also integrated new knowledge from Greek, Roman, and Arabic texts. This balance of respect for tradition, with openness to new discoveries, mirrors modern medicine's challenge, honoring effective historical practices while embracing evidence-based innovations. Finally, the medieval experience reminds us that healing is an art as well as a science. Beyond diagnosis and remedies, the healer's presence, attentiveness, and care were integral to recovery. The rhythm of treatment, the cadence of prayer, and the careful application of herbs all contributed to the patient's sense of well-being. Modern medicine, with its technological sophistication, continues to rediscover the profound impact of human connection, touch, and attention in the process of healing. By studying medieval headache remedies, we gain more than historical knowledge. We learn principles that are timeless: holistic observation, personalized care, integration of mind and body, environmental awareness, the value of ritual and consistency, the power of belief, openness to learning, and the artistry of attentive healing. These lessons transcend centuries, offering guidance for how we approach suffering, pain, and care in the present day. The medieval approach to headaches, strange and elaborate as it may seem, was rooted in a profound understanding of the human experience. It teaches us that pain is not merely a physical phenomenon, but a tapestry woven from body, mind, spirit, and society. Remedies, whether herbal, ritual, or symbolic, reflect a desire to engage with the whole person, to restore balance, and to nurture hope. As we reflect on these lessons, we recognize that even today, the wisdom of the past can enhance modern practice. Observing the patient fully, attending to their environment, respecting the mind-body connection, and embracing both tradition and innovation, allows for more compassionate and effective care. Medieval headache remedies, in all their complexity and ingenuity, continue to illuminate the timeless art of healing. As our journey through the medieval world of headaches draws to a close, it is worth pausing to reflect on the remarkable ingenuity, resilience, and compassion that defined this era of healing. From the herbal gardens of monasteries to the bustling streets of towns, from whispered charms to elaborate rituals, humanity's search for relief has always been intertwined with observation, creativity, and care. Though centuries separate us from these practices, the essence of their wisdom remains alive, echoing softly in modern approaches to health. Medieval remedies, as unusual as some appear, were guided by profound insight. Healers recognized that the human experience of pain extended beyond the physical. They understood the role of environment, of diet, of work, and of emotional state. They knew that touch, attention, ritual, and belief could transform the perception of suffering. In their quiet diligence, they treated not just the symptom of the headache, but the person enduring it. In monasteries, calm observation, careful measurement of herbs, and spiritual support coexisted in harmony. The rhythmic chanting, scented oils, and gentle compresses were not mere ceremony. They were tools designed to soothe mind and body alike. Even in distant villages, the use of charms, incantations, and herbal remedies reflected a sophisticated understanding of human psychology and the power of belief. These practices remind us that healing is as much about nurturing the spirit as it is about addressing the body. Exotic and unusual treatments, while often startling, reveal another enduring lesson: the courage to explore, experiment, and adapt. Medieval healers drew knowledge from distant lands, combining herbs, minerals, and techniques in ways that sometimes bordered on the fantastical. They were guided by observation, intuition, and hope, creating remedies that reflected both culture and necessity. Modern medicine, in its reliance on evidence-based research, continues this spirit of experimentation, though with greater precision and safety. Equally significant is the social context in which these remedies existed. Pain was not experienced in isolation. It was shaped by class, occupation, gender, and environment. The accessibility of treatment, the expectations of endurance, and the cultural interpretations of suffering all influenced how headaches were understood and managed. By studying these contexts, we gain a deeper appreciation for the ways in which medicine is inseparable from society, culture, and human experience. The transition from medieval to modern understanding illustrates the gradual triumph of observation, documentation, and rational inquiry. Yet it also reminds us that progress does not require the abandonment of past wisdom. Many principles underlying medieval care, holistic observation, personalized treatment, attention to environment, and recognition of the mind-body connection, remain relevant. They complement modern pharmacology, technology, and research, demonstrating that science and empathy are not opposites, but partners in healing. As we reflect on the journey from herbs and charms to microscopes and clinical studies, we are invited to consider the timeless nature of human curiosity and perseverance. Headaches, a universal affliction, have always demanded attention, adaptation, and care. Across centuries, people have sought relief through observation, ritual, experimentation, and creativity. The medieval pursuit of cures was not merely primitive or superstitious. It was a sophisticated engagement with the mysteries of the human body and mind. In the calm, slow rhythm of sleep learning, we can allow ourselves to absorb these lessons. We can imagine the quiet monastery corridors, the gentle hands applying compresses, the soft murmur of prayers, and the fragrant steam rising from a carefully prepared infusion. We can sense the patience, care, and intention woven into every remedy. In doing so, we connect not only with history, but with a universal human truth, that suffering invites attention, compassion, and ingenuity. Modern medicine, offers treatments of unprecedented effectiveness. Yet the medieval approach teaches us to value patience, observation, and holistic care. It reminds us to honor the patient's experience, to acknowledge the psychological dimensions of pain, and to create environments that soothe and support. Even in our fast-paced, technology-driven world, these principles are vital. They transform treatment from a mechanical procedure into an act of healing, nurturing, and understanding. Ultimately, the story of medieval headache remedies is a story of resilience, creativity, and hope. It demonstrates that even in the absence of modern knowledge, humans have always sought to understand, alleviate, and transcend suffering. Herbs, prayers, rituals, and imaginative treatments were expressions of a deep, timeless desire to restore balance, comfort, and well-being. This lesson transcends history, speaking to the enduring human capacity for care and innovation. As we settle into quiet reflection, it is comforting to recognize that the wisdom of the past still resonates. Healing has always been more than the removal of pain. It is the cultivation of balance, attention, and understanding. Medieval healers, in their dedication, observation, and ingenuity, provide a model not just of medicine, but of empathy, patience, and hope. Their practices, strange or familiar, remind us that care is an art as much as it is a science. So as the day wanes, and our minds drift toward rest, let us carry with us the timeless lessons of these centuries, to observe closely, to care deeply, to integrate mind, body, and environment, and to approach suffering with creativity, patience, and compassion. The story of medieval headaches is at its heart a story of humanity itself, resilient, inventive, and unceasing in its pursuit of relief, understanding, and balance. In this quiet space, as the night deepens and your mind begins to relax, imagine the layers of history, the hands that prepared herbs, the murmured prayers, and the tender care of centuries past. Feel the continuity of human endeavor, the enduring pursuit of comfort, and the timeless connection between knowledge, observation, and compassion. Headaches, once feared and mysterious, now reveal a broader truth, that care, empathy, and creativity are as vital as any medicine. And as you drift gently into sleep, let the lessons of the past settle softly in your mind. From the medieval remedies of herbs, rituals, and spiritual care, to the modern scientific understanding, the journey of human healing is continuous, rich, and profoundly human. It is a story of courage, observation, patience, and hope. A story that whispers gently, urging us to honor the unity of mind, body, and spirit in every act of care.